My name is Mark. I am 42 years old. I work as a commercial crash investigator for a large auto insurance company based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. My specific region covers the entire Great Basin. If you look at a map of Nevada, the Great Basin is the massive empty area right in the middle of the state. It is mostly flat desert, dry dirt, and sharp gray mountains. The main roads out there are very long and very straight. You can drive for 3 full hours and never see a single gas station or another person anywhere. There is zero cell phone service out there. At night, the darkness is completely absolute. There are no street lights to guide you. Your only source of light is the 2 headlights on the front of your personal car. It is a very lonely and isolated place to drive alone. Most sensible people always try to completely avoid taking these quiet roads after the sun goes down. They know how extremely dangerous it can be to break down out there in the dark. Over the last 4 months, starting early in the year, my office started getting weird accident claims. Terrified drivers were reporting that they were violently run off the road by a very large, aggressive commercial truck. As an insurance investigator, standard aggressive driving claims are completely normal to read. Long-haul truckers get very tired, they get angry, and they sometimes make bad mistakes. But these new crash reports were very different from anything else. Every single driver described the exact same vehicle following them. They all said it was a vintage Peterbilt semi-truck. The truck was painted completely matte black. It had a massive, heavy chrome front grille that looked incredibly menacing up very close. But the absolute strangest detail was the headlights. Every trapped driver said the high beams were impossibly bright. They described the lights as looking like twin intense welding torches staring right at them in their small rearview mirrors. I started pulling the dash camera footage from the heavily damaged cars. Most modern cars have built-in front and rear cameras that record directly onto a digital hard drive. I sat quietly at my desk and watched dozens of short video clips. The scary videos always started the exact same way every single time. The driver is driving completely, entirely alone. They're on a dark, straight stretch of desert highway. The rear camera shows total, complete darkness behind them. Then, out of absolutely nowhere, 2 massive white headlights appear. They do not slowly fade in from a far distance like normal cars do. They just suddenly turn on directly behind the small car, maybe 10 short feet away from the rear bumper. The camera lens instantly flares out from the intense white brightness. In some of the active videos, the huge black Peterbilt truck stays right on the back bumper for miles. It follows very closely for 4 entire miles. Then the blinding headlights just shut completely off. The heavy truck does not pull over to the side shoulder, it does not turn around to go back the other way, it just disappears entirely from the active video feed without a single trace. I thought it was just a group of local kids playing a very dangerous prank on tourists. I decided to drive out to the Great Basin myself to investigate the physical road. I took my large company truck. It is a heavy Ford utility vehicle with a lot of heavy metal tools sitting in the flat back. I parked on the dirt shoulder of Highway 50 near a green mile marker where 3 different crashes had recently happened. I turned off my engine and just sat there in the quiet desert night. When you are out there completely alone, the silence is very heavy and deeply unsettling. You can clearly hear the wind blowing dry sand across the flat asphalt surface. About an hour after midnight, I finally heard it. It was the deep, heavy roar of a massive diesel engine. The loud sound was incredibly intense. It sounded like a heavy train was driving near me. I immediately looked down the long, flat, empty highway. I could see perfectly straight for at least 5 full miles. There were 0 headlights anywhere in sight. It was just absolute pitch-black darkness. But the roaring sound of the engine kept getting much louder and louder. You cannot simply hide a massive commercial truck on a flat, straight road. You especially cannot hide it when the large engine is running at full maximum speed. The physical mechanics of sound do not ever work that way. A very loud engine noise means the huge machine is physically close to you. But the road was completely empty. The loud roar passed right by my parked truck. The heavy metal of my doors actually vibrated from the intense sound waves, but there was absolutely nothing there to see. I just sat alone in the dark, gripping my steering wheel hard. The next morning, I walked the physical stretch of the highway in the bright daylight. I was looking for any physical evidence of a heavy truck. When a giant semi-truck forces a smaller passenger car off the paved road, it usually leaves massive tire tracks in the soft desert sand below. I easily found the deep, narrow tracks of the small cars that had crashed. I found broken plastic pieces from their front bumpers, but I never found a single heavy truck tire track. It was exactly like the heavy black Peterbilt never touched the dirt at all. Another strange physical detail deeply bothered me. In the clear daytime dashcam footage I reviewed back at my office, the massive chrome grille of the truck never reflected the bright sun or the red taillights of the cars it was closely following. Real polished chrome is basically a clean mirror on a vehicle. It naturally reflects everything around it. This specific truck grille reflected absolutely nothing. It was just flat, dull gray in every single video. I started looking into the modern computer data from the crashed cars. Many of the young victims were driving brand new electric vehicles. These new modern cars are completely covered in radar sensors, proximity alarms, and automatic braking computers. When I downloaded the digital black box data from these specific electric cars, I found a completely terrifying pattern. In every single crash case, the electric vehicle computer systems completely failed exactly 3 seconds before the truck appeared. The radar sensors recorded a total massive wave of localized electronic interference. It was not a physical impact, it was a complete digital blackout. A normal diesel truck cannot remotely shut down a modern car computer from 10 feet away. It is physically impossible. Some experts I talked to tried to strictly blame the rural crashes on standard road hypnosis. They said the drivers were just tired and strongly hallucinating. But human road hypnosis does not fry a solid lithium battery control module. I took a large paper map of Nevada and marked every single accident location with red ink. When I stepped back and carefully looked at the map, my stomach felt very sick. The black truck was not just randomly appearing to scare isolated people, it was actively hunting them. All the high-speed crashes happened near very specific turnoffs. These turnoffs always lead to old, abandoned mountain dirt mining roads. These rough dirt roads go very deep into the dead mountains. The truck would closely tailgate the victims, flash its blinding lights, and ride their rear bumpers until they heavily panicked. In their total panic, the drivers would violently jerk their steering wheels to completely pull off. They would pull off the main highway directly onto these rough dirt paths. Once the driver was totally trapped on the bad road, the truck would vanish. The aggressive driving pattern was incredibly deliberate. It was exactly like watching a wild wolf separate a weak sheep from a safe flock. The truck intentionally targeted drivers who were completely alone. It never appeared when 2 or more cars were driving closely together. It only showed up when a single car was miles away from any other human being. The panic the trapped drivers felt must have been completely, overwhelmingly terrible always. You are driving in total darkness, miles from real civilization, and suddenly a massive machine appears. It is inches from your bumper. Your car alarms are loudly screaming because the sensors are actively failing. The blinding white light makes it completely impossible to see clearly ahead. Your only panicked option is to suddenly swerve, but swerving out there is always a totally fatal mistake. The Great Basin Desert does not ever forgive small human mistakes. If you get completely stuck on an abandoned dirt road out there alone, absolutely nobody is coming to save you from the empty, deep darkness. I continued my insurance investigation into the strange black truck. To understand what was happening on the long roads of the Great Basin, I had to look into the past. In the 1970s, Nevada experienced a massive trucking boom. Mining operations were growing very fast, and heavy materials needed to move constantly across the state. Hundreds of young men bought large commercial rigs and drove them day and night. The long stretches of Highway 50 and Highway 6 became incredibly busy. But this heavy traffic also brought a very dark history. Many long-haul drivers completely disappeared on those specific routes. The local police usually blamed these sudden disappearances on drivers running away from bad personal debt or broken families. But the locals knew the truth was much stranger. I spent 3 days digging through dusty paper boxes in the basement of the State Public Library. I found a thick folder about an unsolved case from 1974. The local newspaper called it the Blackout incident. It involved a large runaway rig that simply vanished without a single trace. The missing driver was a young man from Texas. He was driving a heavy Peterbilt truck filled with copper wire. His last radio call to a local dispatcher was full of total panic. He said his steering wheel was completely locked, his brakes were dead, and his heavy truck was accelerating completely on its own. The dispatcher heard a massive crash over the radio, and then total silence. The police searched the entire desert near a large geographic landmark called the Lunar Crater. The Lunar Crater is a massive volcanic hole in the flat desert floor. The police searched for 3 straight weeks. They never found the heavy truck. They never found the young driver. They never even found a single piece of broken glass. I decided to track down one of the retired highway patrol officers who worked that specific case. His name is Robert. He is 70 years old and lives in a small trailer near a quiet desert town. I drove out to see him on a Tuesday morning. We sat on his small porch and drank cheap black coffee. I asked him about the missing black truck near the Lunar Crater. Robert looked away and stared at the empty, dry desert. He told me he never drives the Great Basin Highway stretch at night anymore. He strongly refuses to go out there after the bright moon hits its high peak in the sky. He said the old roads hold on to bad memories. He told me that violent accidents leave a heavy mark on the physical environment. Robert believes the missing truck never actually crashed. He believes the truck is still driving out there in the dark, trapped in a horrible, endless loop. He firmly warned me to stop asking questions about the old missing vehicle. He said some bad things are meant to stay buried deep inside the cold desert sand. I left Robert and went directly back to my office. I heavily wanted a completely logical explanation for everything I was finding. I quickly contacted a university professor who strongly studies acoustic physics. I strictly asked him about the incredibly loud truck engine sound I heard when the flat road was totally empty. He explained that the desert topography can very easily trap loud sounds. The tall mountains act like a giant solid bowl. A heavy truck driving 10 full miles away can perfectly bounce its deep sound waves directly along the flat, dry ground. It heavily creates a totally false audio illusion. He called it a sonic haunting phenomenon. The intense noise is completely real, but the physical source is far away from your ears. This scientific explanation made logical sense to me initially, but it did not explain the dash camera videos. It failed to explain the localized electronic interference recorded in the crashed electric vehicles. I started researching complex geological data for the specific Nevada region. The Great Basin sits on top of massive underground iron deposits. Some local university researchers believe the deep iron can easily create strong magnetic anomalies. These natural fields can become highly charged during certain weather patterns. They proposed a theory about localized space-time slips. The theory says that extremely intense emotional events, like a fatal vehicle crash, can imprint themselves exactly onto a strong magnetic field. The paved road simply plays back a physical recording of the violent past. It is a residual loop of the tragic event projecting onto the present day. This scientific idea explains why the expensive electric cars instantly shut down. A massive surge of local magnetic energy completely overloads their modern computer battery systems. It also perfectly explains the strange visual perspective of the truck headlights clearly seen in the videos. Real vehicle lights naturally cast deep shadows. In the video recordings, the blinding white light beams coming from the black truck cast absolutely zero shadows inside the victim car cabins. A local meteorology expert told me the strange lights might just be atmospheric plasma. It is like an electrical storm forming directly on the dry asphalt pavement. But natural plasma does not deliberately follow a small passenger car for 4 exact miles. Plasma does not strategically force lonely people off the main road toward empty dirt paths. The physics point clearly to a natural weather phenomenon, but the actual observed behavior points clearly to something far more sentient. It acts exactly like a living thing. Before I completely tested the highway myself, I actually interviewed one final survivor. Her name is Sarah. She is a young college student from California. She was driving through the Great Basin last month. She was traveling home late at night to visit her parents. She agreed to meet me at a bright coffee shop in downtown Las Vegas. She looked extremely tired and very nervous. Her bare hands shook while holding her warm paper cup. Sarah told me her terrifying personal story. She was driving her small white sedan on Highway 50 near midnight. The dark road was totally empty. She said her car radio suddenly stopped playing regular music. The digital display screen turned into totally gray static. Then, she felt the temperature inside her small car drop rapidly. She turned the heating system to full power, but cold air blew out the vents. That is when the massive truck appeared directly behind her. She said the incredibly bright lights completely blinded her. She immediately panicked. She pressed her gas pedal down very hard to try and outrun the huge vehicle. She was driving over 90 miles an hour in the total dark, but the massive, heavy truck stayed exactly 2 feet behind her small rear bumper. She could easily hear the terrible loud grinding of its heavy gears. She told me she felt a deep, terrible feeling of pure human dread. It felt exactly like the heavy machine was literally breathing on her neck. The black truck honked its extremely loud horn. It honked repeatedly. It intentionally tried to force her off the road into a sharp, deep ditch. She almost lost total control of her steering wheel twice. But then, a very strange thing happened to safely save her. Another normal car approached from the opposite direction on the divided highway. It was a regular silver minivan with normal yellow headlights. The exact second the minivan lights hit the front windshield of Sarah's small car, the heavy black truck completely vanished. The terrible loud noise instantly stopped. The loud horn disappeared entirely. The freezing air inside her car immediately turned warm again. The passing minivan driver never even hit their brakes. They just drove by normally, completely unaware of the massive, terrifying event. Sarah quickly pulled over to the safe dirt shoulder and cried intensely for 2 full hours. She never looked in her dark rearview mirror again that entire night. Her honest testimony perfectly matched the digital computer data from the other vehicle crashes. The black truck never ever appears when other normal human witnesses are nearby. It completely isolates its single vulnerable target. It acts exactly like a smart, natural predator carefully isolating weak prey. Her simple story deeply terrified me. It fully confirmed that the ghost truck was not just a visual hallucination. It was a very real, very dangerous interactive physical event. It strongly uses intense psychological fear to physically force innocent drivers into making terrible, fatal mistakes. I sincerely thanked her for her honest time and then bought her a hot lunch. I drove back out to Highway 6 the very next weekend. I actively wanted to directly verify the specific visual perspective myself. I parked near the Lunar Crater again. The night air was incredibly dry and very cold. I brought 3 separate battery-powered digital cameras with me. I placed them on tripods pointing down the dark, empty highway. I safely sat inside my heavy truck and just waited patiently. At exactly 2 in the morning, the heavy desert silence completely broke. I heavily heard the deep, familiar, loud engine sound rumbling loudly across the flat, dry ground again. It sounded very deeply angry. The strong noise was moving extremely fast toward my parked truck. I slowly reached over and tightly locked all 4 of my heavy metal passenger doors. I nervously stared into the rearview mirror. Suddenly, the blinding white lights instantly appeared directly behind my back bumper. They did not slowly fade in, they just sparked into pure bright existence instantly. My 3 digital cameras outside immediately shut completely off. The small computer screens went totally black. My heavy truck engine dashboard started heavily flashing bright red error codes. I completely could not start my own vehicle. I was completely trapped. I quickly remembered what the older local truckers highly call the rule of 3. The locals strictly say there are very specific firm rules to follow if the dark ghost truck actively targets your car. First, you must completely cover your rearview mirror with your hand. You absolutely cannot look directly into the dead bright lights. Looking at the lights highly causes total mental panic. Second, you must safely slow down to exactly 30 miles an hour. Do not hit the brakes hard. Do not strongly speed up to easily run away. You absolutely cannot ever outrun the massive machine. Third, you must completely ignore the aggressive loud horn. The black truck will blow its deep horn directly behind you to quickly make you swerve. You must firmly keep your steering wheel perfectly straight. I closed my eyes tightly and covered my mirror with my right hand. The massive engine roared so loudly my teeth genuinely hurt. The loud horn blasted 3 distinct separate times. It was highly deafening. The bright light was so intense I could perfectly see the solid white glow straight through my closed eyelids. The temperature inside my truck cabin suddenly heavily dropped to near freezing. I could clearly see my own breath in the cold air. I counted slowly to 60 in my head. I firmly kept my bare hand strongly over the inside mirror. I did not move the steering wheel 1 single inch. I just nervously sat there and silently waited. At exactly 60 seconds, the loud roaring noise instantly fully stopped. The bright blinding light vanished. The freezing air left the truck cabin. I safely opened my eyes and lowered my hand. The dark, empty highway was completely silent again. I pressed the start button. My engine instantly turned on. There was absolutely 0 mechanical damage. The small digital cameras outside were ruined. I drove away quickly and never returned to the deep Great Basin. You can find the ghost truck yourself near Highway 6, but strictly ask yourself first, is the heavy machine acting as a helpful warning of road danger, or is it an angry force claiming human souls for the cold desert?